Hi, I'm Jeremy Stafford, handgun editor for Guns and Ammo magazine. And today we've been presented with a really cool opportunity to talk to firearms icon Ted Nugent about an online auction that he's doing. And before we move any further, we'll talk about those websites. So it's tednugentauctions.com or burleyauctions.com, where you can see he's putting up several guitars, he's some of his vehicles, and a whole lot of really cool custom firearms. So with me today, we have not only Ted, but Robb Burley, who's going to be running the auction. And without any further ado, Ted, we got to ask, it's a lot of good stuff, but why?
Well, Jeremy, I think we can all agree, all my friends agree with me all the time, because truth, logic, and common sense is my forte. But I think we can all agree that the greatest philosopher of all times was Dirty Harry when he said, a good man needs to know his limitations. Jeremy, I'm 72 years clean and sober. I have always been on the tip of the spear for Second Amendment rights and for clean and sober, American dream celebration. And that really resonates with really, really good people. And really, really good people seem to be really, really generous people. So I am just bombarded with these wonderful, loving, perfect gifts all my life. But enough is enough. So I'm streamlining. At
Okay.
72, I'm reducing my borderline obscene accumulation to utilitarian, pragmatic considerations. And when it gets right down to it, I am the gonzo guy, but I'm a pragmatic, utilitarian guy. If I don't use something, it just doesn't make any sense to hang on to. So I'm having an auction, and Robb Burley is the master of all things gonzo orgy auctions. And so we're going to reduce the accumulation factor for all the practical reasons that I'm sure you would do as well.
Well, probably because I have a fraction of that amount of guns, and just like you, cleaning them every year to make sure, inspecting them, it gets to be a task, something that should just be nothing but love.
Yeah.
Sometimes gets a little onerous.
It gets overwhelming. And again, it's a big part of my life, and it's time to streamline, simplify, and focus on those tools that I go to, and there's plenty of them, and you saw the list of guns. Somebody should own those guns and guitars and trucks that they're going to use. They're going to put to use that beautiful 1911 Mastodon grip 10 millimeter, and that custom Kimber, and that beautiful Wilson Combat 10, all these 10 millimeters. I'm still keeping plenty of them, but somebody should use those, and I haven't been using those.
So looking at it, there's a couple of constants in there, especially when it comes to the handguns, which are my forte, and that is, you love that 44 Magnum and you love that 10 millimeter, and you have some beautiful representations in there. Any particular backstory on those calibers for you?
Well, I was already a cop in Lake County, Michigan, starting in 1984. And I believe the infamous Miami shootout was 88, maybe 86, 88.
86, yes, sir.
But when it happened, I studied that stuff. Evan Marshall of the Detroit Police Department Homicide, who went on to study all the ballistic results of shootouts. So when I read the results of bad guys with either excessive blubber, leather, or chemical insulation taking historical 38 rounds, historical 9 millimeter rounds, and I studied the Miami shootout in all its embarrassing ramifications and incidences. And I became fascinated when Jeff Cooper was hired to create a one-stop shot handgun, which of course is fallacy. But we've come close to that with the right tactics and all the other elements to that equation. And I've always carried a gun. I've carried a gun since I graduated from high school in 1967. I got a clean hanky, I got a pocket knife, I got some guitar picks, I got a gun and some speed loaders. Duh. What's plan B? So when I studied those instances and I saw where the good guys were killed for lack of training, firepower, tactics. And so I studied those, and the conclusion of the studies is that I need training, tactics, the proper ammo design in the capable caliber. Well, most of my 44 Magnum carrying days was like Dirty Harry. I carried 44 specials when the Winchester Silver Tip 44 special round came out. That worked good on reasonable range deer hunting in Michigan. But of course, 44 Magnum, I used Remington 240 soft points most of the time, killed bears in Alaska and caribou, a lot of long range stuff. And I wouldn't even tell you if I didn't have witnesses. But so I carried those things that worked. Not worked based on a hunch of a Detroit guitar guy, but based on the studies of the masters, the Elmer Keiths, the J.D. Jones, the Lee Juris, certainly Peter Pye. So again, that's my pragmatism coming forth. If I'm going to be capable of neutralizing a life-threatening force, there's some ingredients that have been proven. I'm going with those ingredients.
That's so wonderfully said. And you know, you throw a couple names out there like Lee Juris and things like that. And there's, you know, a lot of the younger people might not get it and might not remember, but boy, I remember riding my bike to the corner store and reading about those guys in Guns and Ammo, you know, reading Cooper's Corner. And so coming kind of from that same school of thought as you, and it is so cool to hear you throw those names out. If I could just backtrack just a little bit though, with all this wonderful accumulation and all this streamlining, what was it that got you in touch with or kind of set you on the path to using Burley auctions?
What brought me to Robb Burley is an extension of what I've already been articulating, and that is that I hang out with gun guys. Robb Burley was the natural auctioneer for me because he's a gun guy. And he also understands the celebrity factor with some of these very unique custom firearms that I'm willing to auction off. And he and I have become friends. In fact, I don't know many systems by which you can bond with someone, but during the record-breaking freeze in Texas, I really bonded with Robb Burley because we grabbed them chainsaws and we had a Texas chainsaw massacre with all the cedars that were hanging with ice. So we've really become friends. We had a ballistic chainsaw massacre that day. So we've become friends, rock and roll friends, music friends, American dream friends, and ultimately gun friends, which make the best friends in the world.
I agree with you there. There's no friends like the friends you have after a good day of shooting, sitting around a campfire.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. That's my life.
I don't want to jump in here on Ted because he's, once he gets going, he is a fun to watch. And I'm just sitting here smiling, listening to the man talk. But, the guns he's selling, there's one of a kinds, one-offs in there. It's like it's like a garage full of custom cars that were built for just this one guy, where the serial number is literally Nuge 01.
Oh, there's a couple of those guns we're going to talk about before I let you go.
Right.
Trust me. There's one in there I got to know about, man.
Oh, I figured there'd be a list of them because, some of them are one of a kinds that had never been fired. Some of them you can tell he carried. He's got a 44 mag in there that we tell he carried. It's got engraved down the side of it. I'm sure he's got all the details and stories on every one of them because every time I pick him up, I learn more about it each time I talk to him about it. So it has really been a thrill to go through each and every one of these guns because it's not your typical gun collection by any means.
So, Ted, speaking about these guns, I'm just going to get right out to it. And I saw a beautiful, looks to me like a 629 with a KISS Crew logo on the side.
Yeah, well, everybody in the rock and roll world knows that I'm the gun nut. I love tools, especially firearms. So when I did one of many tours with KISS, they're probably scratching their heads. Well, what do we get Ted Nugent as a tour bonus? And of course, the manager, Doc McGee, said, "Well, let's get him a gun." So they made this beautiful custom 44 Magnum with the KISS logo on the barrel. And I think that's worth a lot of money. I've never fired it. I did not carry it. It's one of those guns that kind of it's a display piece, but
sure.
you certainly can fire it. It's a real McCoy, and it's a beautiful firearm. I think it's stainless steel. If it's not stainless steel, it's brushed nickel. But that's one of many that have a real unique history to it. It's one of a kind. There's no other gun like that on the planet.
Yeah, that's something. And you have a couple of others there that are so striking, and yet many of them kind of follow the same type. We talked about the 44 Magnums, but you're not shy when it comes to barrel length. I'm seeing some 8s and some 10s in there.
Yeah,
Ted.
yeah. I think on the block I have a 2-inch 44 Model 29 that Peter Pye custom made for me. I think he and J.D. Jones put it together. And then there's also a 3-inch 44 Magnum. And if I don't hit the bear with the bullet, I'll cook his face from the flames. So, but there I have the 2-inch 44. There's a 3-inch 44. There's a bunch of 4-inch. There's some 6.5. There's the 8 3/8 inch, the rotational Dirty Harry gun in the different Dirty Harry films. A lot of times, John Milius he'd carry the 6 or 6.5 inch, but then for dramatic effect, they'd show the 8 3/8. Then I also have what I believe is a 12 7/8, what they call the silhouette gun. It's a 44 Magnum Model 29 with, I think it's 12 7/8. Here's the interesting aspect to that. I never fired that gun. Who has a 44 Magnum silhouette revolver and doesn't shoot it? But again, I never carried the 2 or the 3, but I carried a lot of 4-inch. I carried the 6 and the 6.5. I don't think I'm keeping an 8 3/8. And I use that often in the old days, but I find that, and as a pistol guy, it's true. A 2-inch 44, if you got the right sight picture and that gun goes off when your brain tells you it's supposed to, I couldn't find any difference in accuracy between the short barreled and the long barrel.
I know we're running out of time, but there's a couple other things I'd like to hit on real quick. One, I promised my editor I'd ask about one of these other pistols, and that is that engraved Belgian high power.
Yeah. I sold out the Pontiac Silverdome in 1978. And we rocked our asses off. My God, we left a stain on the souls of every man, woman, and child there. And that was given to me by my booking agent, Diversified Management. They gave me that engraved high power 9mm with the beautiful pearl handle grips. And they presented that to me for a sold out concert. I think we set not just the attendance record, but the gross revenues for that facility that year.
Wow.
And again, people are going, well, why would you get rid of that? Well, I can't explain it so that everyone can understand my explanation, but I've never fired it. I don't put guns on the wall. They're not trophies or display items. To me, a gun is a shooting tool. So, and now there's some gonzo Ted Nugent rock and roll fans that are also turned into NRA Life members. In fact, I've got anti-gunners to become gun store owners. I mean, I can give you some stories that blow your mind because I so repeat the perfection of keeping and bear arms. So I've been able to deliver this simple truism all my life. So I know people that love the music and love the attitude and become gun lovers, they'll get that gun and they will appreciate it more than sitting in my safe for 48 years. So it is a beautiful gun, but it was a great story behind that.
So I noticed that you have an axe in easy reach. Do you got a handgun in easy reach too?
You think? I always have a Glock 10mm. I have a Glock 20 that I carry every day. I got 6 of these. And I'm carrying right now some Remington 165 grain stuff, and it's got a test of a Crimson Trace forward trigger guard laser on it. I don't use the laser when I train, but I have it there, and I got a new Trigicon sights on it that they just put on for me because I have to rotate my Glocks because I shoot every day. And I got 4 magazines. I always carry a 10mm with at least 4 magazines. And sometimes my second gun is a 29, a Glock 29, because it'll take the same magazine. I'm familiar with it. And it really has served me well. Plus, I deer hunt with it, and I do some control work with it. And I see that bad guys with the right substance abuse in their system, they'll take a lot of lead. But I think Evan Marshall's studies have proven that the old 357 plus P plus stuff, 125 grain Winchester stuff is historical and accurate. It's crazy accurate. I mean, I
Yeah.
train out here on LaRue Tactical. I think they're like 16-inch reset plates, and off a rest and occasionally offhand, I train at 100 yards, and with a rest, I can hit that plate 100 every shot. I mean, I won't all be in the middle, but I'll hit that reset plate, and offhand, I've done a magazine 15 out of 15. So the gun is capable once this guy knows when it happens. When this guy knows when it happens, and this guy sends the signal to this guy, the gun is supremely accurate.
Being that you're at the point in life where you're kind of, streamlining. That's what that's what we used before.
Yeah, that's what the auction's about. Yeah.
If you could talk to your younger self, if you could give your younger self just a couple of words of advice, what would it be?
That's so easy, because I really have run a true north compass setting. My dad instilled that in us. The decisions I made against all the odds to remain clean and sober, I mean, that's got to be a gift from God. To stay on, I've never missed a hunting season in 70 years. In fact, I was at deer camp in Michigan in the fall of 1949. I was 10 months old. So that spirit, my show's called The Spirit of the Wild. I have a song, Spirit of the Wild. I have a song, Spirit of the Buffalo. That Native American hands-on conservation lifestyle guided me really smart for a hyper, maniac rhythm and blues rock and roll guy. But there is one thing that I really messed up. And if I could talk to young Ted, I would say the following. Don't jump off those amps every night. You're going to destroy your meniscus. I never knew what a meniscus was till I hobbled into the doctor's office and he said I didn't have any.
So that's what cost you your two knees then, huh?
Oh yeah, I flew.
To take it in a slightly different direction, but we were talking about injuries, so I thought it'd be a good segue, was you do a lot with your charities for the veterans that come home, especially I noticed in your home state of Michigan. Is that something you'd like to talk about a little bit?
Well, again, freedom is not free. And one guy had terminal cancer. And his last request, I never met this guy. He got a hold of my booking agent, Nick Karras and Dave Leone at Diversified Management. And he had terminal cancer, and his last wish in life was to go hunting with Ted Nugent. And there was no function like that. There's no charities or anything like that back then. And I went, wow, yeah, sure. As soon as possible. Where is he? He's up North Michigan. Well, I got a buddy. I got a sheriff in Jackson County that we shoot rabbits with a 38 special 158 grain round nose lead stuff out of our Smith & Wesson Model 19s, and I had a 4-inch 19. I got it. I think I got it at Kresge's. Anyhow, so I said, his name was Jason. He's telling me stories about the Vietnam horrors. And I had no idea this was like a baptism by fire to me. And I'm, well, how did you get, you're only 27 years old. I mean, well, Agent Orange and the shots they give you. And he's going, I had no idea what he was talking, clueless. And we had a fun time, man. I had him laughing, and he told me it was the first time he'd laughed in a long time. He was really, I didn't think they called it post-traumatic stress at the time. It was pre-designation, I think. But you could tell he had a lot of baggage. Mm-hmm. I made him, I'm a fun guy. I made him laugh. We had a campfire. I think we cooked a squirrel. And he never thought of hunting rabbits with a pistol. And I said, you get them on the lee side of a brush pile. They'll sometimes sit at 50 yards, and you can get that trigger squeeze, shoot that rabbit with a 38, man. He had a riot.
That's
so that was a baptism to a desperate need and a desperate condition that I felt a bit embarrassed that I was so ignorant of all that.
Hey, I don't want to interject, but I got a really good story about Ted about this very thing, because here about 2 weeks ago, we had General Howe, who's the current head of Joint Special Operations Command, come into town. And one of his requests was to go on a hog hunt. So we took him over to Llano, Texas, and we arranged this hog hunt. I tell Ted about it. And not only does Ted say, yeah, he'll come over, he drives 2.5 hours all the way to Llano, Texas to play 30 minutes, maybe 20 minutes for General Howe and General Hutmacher, who was he was a 2-star general, head of Delta Force. I mean, these were true American heroes. And Ted was the first, I mean, he was quick to volunteer. He drove all the way over there, 2.5 hours to play 20 minutes in the middle of this little bitty barbecue joint in Llano, Texas. And you had Ted Nugent with Chris Layton, who was Stevie Ray Vaughan's drummer, and Jimmy Vaughn, who was one of the great, blues guitar players out of Texas, who was also Stevie Ray Vaughan's brother. And Ted and him put on a great impromptu show right there amongst the napkins and the barbecue sauce right in the corner of the restaurant. Put on a great show, and then turned around and drove all the way home because he had an early morning obligation. I mean, he does. If people ask what he's like working for Ted, Ted is selfless when it comes to the bets. Matter of fact, we're putting an event on Friday night before the auction. Ted, there's probably, we're up to about a dozen bets that coming in for that. We're talking guys that are taking some serious injuries. We're talking amputees and people that were, IED explosives and special ops guys that were, in SEAL Team 6. They're all, and we put out the word, and we were overrun with people wanting to come. And, the response towards Ted from the veterans and the people that know that he's out there promoting the Second Amendment rights is really overwhelming. You can see it on their face. I mean, they're just as thrilled about that as they are about the rock and roll, the guitars and everything else.
That's amazing. And Mr. Burley, while I have you on, so I don't forget, real quick, you want to tell people how they can get involved with this auction?
Yeah, burleyauction.com is a good way to go. You can also go to tednugentauction.com if you can't remember burleyauction.com. Believe it or not, it was available, so we wouldn't got it. But burleyauction.com, they can go there, and it has all the details. You can bid online. You can bid. We actually are going to have a live auction event, and now that the restrictions are off, we can get over 350 people seated in there comfortably and still keep them spaced apart. So we are going to have a good live auction crowd, but the online bidding is available that'll run live simultaneously as well.
Well, Jeremy, I got to tell you, I do my Spirit Campfire podcast tonight, and my wife sent down my mail here. I haven't even looked at it yet, but I get this every day. I haven't read this stuff. But I don't know if you can see behind me, but on my gun safe, on my gun cabinet, I have hundreds and hundreds of challenge coins and patches of military and law enforcement. And this is today's mail. And I got all these cards from law enforcement agencies, the city of Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, the Pinole officer, police officers. Got one from an elderly lady here whose husband is a big fan. I got one here from the corrections officer of Erie, Pennsylvania, Erie County Department of Corrections. I haven't read these yet, but I know what's in them.
I can only imagine, and I couldn't imagine a better way to wrap up the interview than tying in your legacy and the impact that you've had on people, specifically in our Second Amendment community, and frontline heroes, police officers, and those in the military. Your charities speak for your work. What you just shared with us speaks to your work and your legacy, and you're iconic, Uncle Ted. I can't say anything more.
Well, I'm a hell raiser, I'll tell you that. I raise hell, I'll tell you that, but I raise it for all the right reasons. And let me just summarize, and people have to get past the ego. My enthusiasm ate my ego by the time I was 12.
Thank you so much, Ted. This was amazing.
Well, thanks, Jeremy. It's good talking to you, man. God bless Guns and Ammo. My life is Guns and Ammo. And a big salute to all the writers and the editors and the publishers. It's a great publication. I can't wait to get mine, and I read every issue, man.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Ted.
Godspeed.
Have a great day, sir.